Thanks very much. A couple of extra seats there at the back. Come on. I gently welcome you in. No? Okay. Yes, please come in. We've got a few little seats here at the front. We've got some at the back. I'm sure that more people will come in as we get started. Hi everyone, welcome to the Blue Zone of the UK Pavilion here at COP26. My name is David Garrido. I am a presenter for Sky Sports. It is just fantastic to be here. We have a session entitled How Sport Can Help Kick Carbon. Sky, as I'm sure you're aware, are our principal and media partners for COP26. We have our own pledge to go net zero carbon by 2030. It's called Sky Zero. You've probably seen the ads on the telly in the last couple of months. We are delighted to be holding this session in the company of three sports personalities who will shortly be joining me on stage. They've all won major titles in their sports. They've achieved incredible feats in their careers. Arguably, they're having a similarly impressive impact in the world of climate action as well. Now, sport is potentially, I say potentially, one of the most powerful tools we have to help combat the climate emergency. Why? Well, because of the sheer number of fans who eat, drink, live, breathe sport. 3.5 billion alone follow football. And also because of the nature of that relationship, because fans adore their favourite teams or their favourite players, and they really idolise those elite athletes. So it's a huge opportunity to really harness that passion point if you are said sport, team, athlete, organisation, to stand up for planet and to get the legions of fans who follow you to change their mindsets and change their behaviours. Now, these three athletes we're about to bring on have always seized their chance. Let's have a look at them in action.
Martin Offiah trying to make some space. Now then, Martin Offiah, he's got Alan Tate to beat on the outside, and soon he's going to go the full length. That is one sensational try.
It's a good catch. Ebony-Rainford-Brent, good running catch.
Ebony-Rainford-Brent just runs outside the circle and takes a good catch over her shoulder.
I'm desperate to get much more involved in sustainability and sport and trying to get messages out there to help the world change and do the transition that we need to secure our future on the planet.
Okay, so having seen them in action, let's see them in the flesh here at COP26. Please welcome on stage, and we're going to bring them on one by one. Give them a warm welcome as they come on stage. The highest ever English try scorer in rugby league. He played in 4 Challenge Cup wins, 5 championship teams, 3 Regal Trophy wins, 1 Lancashire County Cup victory. He was twice man of the match, winning the Lance Todd Trophy at Wembley, where he has his own statue. His 90-metre solo try in the 1994 Challenge Cup final win over Leeds is remembered as one of the finest ever seen in a final. Ladies and gentlemen, Martin Offiah. Next up, the most decorated female sailor in Olympic history. She secured a silver medal alongside Saskia Clark at London 2012 in the women's 470 class. But the duo went one better at Rio 2016 to claim gold. She repeated the feat this summer in Tokyo, where she was also, by the way, selected as one of Team GB's flag bearers. And this time she won gold alongside Ailey McIntyre. And she's also claimed 3 World Championships to boot. Hannah Mills. And finally, we have a lady who was the first black woman to play cricket for England. She was part of the World Cup winning side of 2009 and then helped England win the Women's World T20 and retain the Women's Ashes later that year. She played her entire career at Surrey, where she is now a director at Sky Sports. We like to think of her as one of our own, as a pundit, a commentator, and now also, crucially in this context, a documentary maker. Ebony-Rainford-Brent. Got the room warmed up, guys. Yes, we do. And also, by the way, hat-trick of MBEs. Just casually sitting alongside me. Make me feel important, thanks. Right, okay, so Martin, you still doing your sprint training? Have you still got that turn of pace that we saw just there on that video?
I'm a little bit like an old Ferrari. You know, there's still something under the hood, but you can't rev it too much because you might break something.
just keep doing the stretches. Ebony, still a nice, safe pair of hands?
Yeah, they've always been a little bit dodgy. The cameras did me good there. I'll still give it a whirl, but yeah, not catching as well as I used to.
I mean, but you know, you're still both involved in the sports that you played and you competed with, you know, with such excellence over your careers. Now, Hannah, you are still obviously competing. You know, you've just come back from, well, not just come back from, but you've come back from Tokyo with that gold medal, the second of your career. I mean, absolutely astonishing. You've been involved in Sail GP recently in Cadiz. Sail GP, by the way, if you're unaware, F50 foiling catamarans, really, really cool, quick sailboats, aren't they? And they're amazing. They go at such a rate of knots in national teams, competing all over the world, and very, very sustainable sport too, I have to say. You were competing in Cadiz, but it was an interesting end to your weekend in Spain. Tell us about that.
Yeah, it's an incredibly exciting league, Sail GP, and it's new to me. As you could see in the video, my sailing's a little bit slower. These boats go like 50 miles an hour around the racetrack, 10-minute races, really intense. And I was on the board as a female participant for the first time in Cadiz, which was amazing. And the second day was exceptionally windy. And to be honest, I was nervous all day before we went out. And we went out, we were doing really well. We were in the final race to try and claim the prize, the top prize. And we did this massive pitch pole, which is where this 50-foot boat sticks its nose in and goes up on its end and flips over. So it wasn't quite what I'd signed up for, but it was cool to be on board.
It was cool to be on board. It looked dramatic. Thankfully, everyone emerged absolutely fine and unscathed, by the way. It's worth saying that. But listen, it's such a pleasure to be with all three of you. Hannah, I'd like to just sort of stick with you for the moment and actually just tell us about your current projects, what you're passionate about in this space, and then I'll come to the other two guests, Martin and Ebony, what your various sort of projects and initiatives are, just to kind of like prove your climate credentials, if you like.
Well, I guess my sort of sustainability and climate journey began in the build-up to the Rio 2016 cycle. Everywhere we went, we were starting to see more and more plastic, and it was particularly bad in the waters of Rio. And we spent about 180 days training there in the build-up to the Games, and it impacted me so much that I just felt I had to do something. And as an athlete campaigning, I felt I had a platform to be able to do that. And so when I carried on to Tokyo, I felt, okay, what can I do? Let's look at what I can do myself in reducing single-use plastics in my sport. And then actually, wouldn't it be cool if other athletes, sports fans, events got involved as well? So I partnered with the IOC and we launched the Big Plastic Pledge, which is all around eradicating single-use plastic in sport. It was actually really challenging trying to do a campaign like that whilst competing and training for the Games. And it was something that I mentally struggled with a bit, because I felt sometimes like I wasn't giving enough attention to the sustainability stuff, and then my sailing was suffering, so that was a bit of a challenge. But yeah, we got to the Games and we did some amazing projects this year around World Oceans Day. We did a project with London Fashion Week and Vinanomi, some sustainable fashion designers, and we've brought on board around 15 global athletes that are passionate in this space around educating and raising awareness on plastic.
Absolutely amazing. But it's an important point, actually, that you mentioned just sort of briefly on when current athletes are involved in cause and in purpose, that we've got to remember they're still current athletes. They've still got to perform at the highest level, and obviously it's up to them to manage that sometimes quite tricky balance. Martin, over to you. What was the trigger and what are you currently involved in? Sum up those two for us.
Well, I'm involved in electric vehicle charging infrastructure. I'm the brand ambassador and investor in a company called Connected Curb, who are the greenest electric vehicle charging infrastructure company in the UK. Yeah, anybody who knows anything about electric vehicles, if you've got your own driveway, like I have, you can put your own charge on that driveway, get a government grant, and as long as you don't go beyond the range of your vehicle, you'll never need public charging. And you know, most journeys, daily journeys, going out to pick the kids or go to the shops, I never go beyond the range of my vehicle. But people who don't have driveways don't have that same ease and convenience. And Connected Curb have come up with a solution, a sustainable, a future-proof solution that will also incorporate induction charging, using recycled materials, and they have a mantra of EV for everybody. EV is perceived as something which is for affluent people, people with driveways, but no, we believe people in urban areas, you know, of different income levels, should be able to, you know, experience this, because this is for everybody. It's just not for the people who are here. Sometimes I do feel when I come to these things, I'm, you know, preaching to the choir, because we're all on board, we get it. But it's getting that message out to other areas, people who feel that it's not for them, to make them feel included, make them feel passionate, and take them on my journey. Connected Curb will be up here all next week. I think they are sponsoring a sustainability forum near the Green Zone. And yeah, you know, I'm passionate about it. It's something that you can connect with everyone because we'll all have to get somewhere. So I think in life it's better to connect with somebody on things that, you know, they have to do and you have to do. We all know that if you get around sustainably, not only is it healthier for the planet, but it's healthier for you as an individual. Because now, unless I'm, you know, carting a fridge around or a sofa, if a journey's, you know, below 2 miles, I'm definitely going to walk. And that's one thing that, if you think differently about my car, because I'm of a generation where, you know, a car meant a lot different to a man, a status, you know, something maybe to the opposite sex, showing you that, you know, there are other things to think about. But now I think of my car as just a mode of transport. So it was a gateway into sustainability for me.
You are very passionate about it, and we're so glad that you're here, you know, to share these stories with us, Martin. Just tell us, where did that start? Very briefly, like, you had a trigger though, like, and it was to do with a fellow professional, wasn't it?
Yeah, we all have triggers. I think life is about opportunity. You know, my rugby career, my parents sent me to a private school that didn't have a football team. I thought they were being horrible to me. It was a boarding school. I had the opportunity, then I had to have the curiosity, because sometimes, you know, you get opportunity, but then you think, oh, that's not for me. But I was curious about it, the same way that, you know, anyone is curious. Even if you meet, you know, your future wife, you meet her, opportunity, you had to meet her, and then you're curious. You think, oh, she's all right. So you investigate a bit more. So that's the way it was. A guy called Andy Gomersall was part of England's 2003 World Cup winning squad, who's part of N2, a sustainable IT company, recycling, and I think they're also exhibiting here at COP. He gave me a lift in this i3, and I thought, wow, what's this? It's amazing. Anyone who's been in an i3, I'm preaching to the converted. You know what it's like. It's silent. It goes really quickly, instant torque, and I just thought, what is this? So I investigated a little bit more, finally got my wife one. And then I had a gas guzzler, and then she started ringing me, saying, Martin, bring my car back. Because I thought to myself, why do I want to pay £100 to fuel up, you know, a gas guzzler when I can use an i3 that's cheaper? So that was how I got into it. And then just by chance, I got the opportunity to get involved with Connected Curb. And when I saw what they were doing, I thought, even though I've got a driveway, I think, you know, for this to take hold, everyone has to get involved. And we have to communicate that to everybody.
It's the accessibility.
Yes,
isn't it?
that's
Absolutely. That's the key word. Ebony, I mean, for you, you know, you're involved in all sorts of different things. You know, I love just sort of seeing your social media and how much you're reflecting this. So again, what was the trigger for you, and what are you currently involved in?
Yeah, trigger for me was quite a personal one in terms of, I mean, this is not a great story, but I had a dodgy bit of meat. I was a big meat eater, nothing wrong with that. But I had a dodgy bit of meat, wasn't feeling great. And one of my best friends, and this is where it has to be emotional, sort of while I was in that process, started sending me a lot of documentaries about the impact of meat on the climate, on animals, all these sort of things. And I thought, let me give it a go. Let me just try. Let me just do a little bit. And I made a decision to not buy meat. Just it doesn't mean I wouldn't eat it, but I wouldn't buy it as a first stage. And then you go down this rabbit hole because you start to think, hold on, maybe I can do a bit more. Loved my convertibles, loved my cars, gave up and went electric bike. And you just start going down the rabbit hole of change. So a lot of that was internal, but I was still in the sports world where I would say talking about sustainability wasn't a big thing. And what I have noticed, and I think this is one thing that I say working for someone like Sky, when the opportunity came up to start getting involved in talking about sustainability, making change, seeing how we can get involved, it was a real opportunity for me to kind of take all the personal change I'd been doing over 5 years behind the scenes and have a kind of an environment where I could talk about how our sport could use it to make a difference.
And you have done that brilliantly for Sky. In fact, I think actually it's time that we saw another little video, because Ebony this summer made a documentary called Cricket's Climate Crisis. In fact, we aired it yesterday in the IMAX here in Glasgow in the Green Zone. So let's just show you a brief snippet right now of Cricket's Climate Crisis.
Welcome to NASA and to Mikey, and sadly to the British weather, because as you can probably see behind Michael Holding, the covers are on and we have a delay to the toss, probably therefore a delay to the start of this test and this series.
50 degrees temperatures might be commonplace in places like Australia in as little as, you know, 20, 30 years. And you think you're not going to play cricket in that, and you realise, is our sport actually going to be able to be played in 20, 30 years.
England Cricket have tweeted in the past few minutes to say that Joe Root's currently in hospital with severe dehydration. I'm telling you earlier about the extreme conditions in Sydney, reached 57 degrees out in the middle where Root was batting, looking to save the match for England.
You look at the science, actually, by 2030 that we're actually in a lot of trouble with the planet. You only have to look at the number of kind of bushfires, floods, storms, things like that are going on. If we don't address it soon, it's really going to be an issue.
The Sydney fires was really a daunting thing. It was a massive thing at the time, and being, you know, around it and in close proximity to it was really scary, and just watching it all unfold was really eye-opening and something that, you know, people need to address. It's not just a one-time thing. These things will happen, and they will happen more as we continue to make the earth warmer.
And Ebbs, I think one of the things that really struck me about that, of course, was showing pictures of you know, wildfires in Australia, but where, you know, the county you've represented for, you know, your career, where I live in Surrey, we had a ladies' golf tournament that suffered wildfires very close to it. It was cancelled in the Rose Series. So this is something that is very, very close to home, isn't it? Are you confident that cricket is taking this issue seriously, that it realises, first of all, that it's under threat because of climate change and it needs to stand up for the planet?
I think we're at the awareness stage, if I'm honest. I'd love to say we're a lot further down. I think where we are is now really actually making that recognition point that our sport is being impacted by the climate, and as a collective we need to come together. So there's been pockets of activity. You look at Lords, became one of the first stadiums to go fully renewable. You look at the Oval Cricket Ground, which is a great stadium. They moved away from single. So there's been lots of pledges, but there hasn't been this sort of collective movement. And I think in this process of doing the documentary, and we've spoken globally to Australia, there hasn't been enough, I don't believe, from the powers that be, enough collective action. But there is an opportunity because people are taking movements, athletes are starting to speak up. There are sort of, people are taking stock of where are we as an organisation in terms of our carbon footprint and looking to make a change. So I think there's a window now of about the next 12 months where change can be driven. People are starting to draw strategies up. One thing I would like, though, is more noise. I think that's what I would like to see, more noise. I think all the work's been doing is great, but what if you're doing that, a bit like I was doing stuff on my own, is that inspiring anybody else? So we do need to get to a stage where we're shouting about the work we're doing and a very clear strategy, but I think change is possible.
Martin, what about the picture in Rugby Union? We saw typhoons, remember, at the 2019 World Cup in Japan. The France-Scotland game got cancelled. We could easily have rugby league grounds flooded here in the UK. Do you feel the RFU, the RFL, that they're making the right moves to try and combat this problem?
I have to agree with Ebony. You know, things are being done. You know, if you want to answer that question, you have to really go and look into the internet and find out what is being done. I know that World Rugby, the Super League and the RFU have sustainable charters. I know there's lots of things being done. I'm going to Twickenham in a couple of weeks. I know there's electric buses that shuttle the fans around. I know at Super League grounds there are solar panels on the roofs. A lot's been done, but sometimes when we focus on the things that are just being done, then I think, how authentic is it? Is it just greenwashing? And I say again, you know, you have a right to try and get people who are not thinking sustainably. It's not just enough just to do it yourself. You have to, as Ebony said, you have to shout about it. We have to not only preach to the choir or talk to ourselves, or we have to go out and be brave and find people who don't think like we think and have honest conversations with them. And I think that's where sport could do more.
Hannah, do you want to come in on this point?
Yeah, I think it's a really, really valid point. And I guess for me, you know, sport reaches literally basically every community on earth. I think every person has a favourite sports person or a sports club they follow. They don't always have a favourite politician or a person, you know, in power. And I just think that sport is so unique in its ability to cross borders and unify people and change behaviours. And yeah, just the reach and the impact it can have if we can unite around climate change and what is coming and is already coming in many areas of the world, then I think, yeah, sport can be a massive player.
Well, what about your sport? World Sailing have done some excellent work in this space in terms of devising a strategy, Agenda 2030, which is perhaps one of the most sophisticated ones out there, really trying to have not just purpose but impact, and the difference is important. But what's the biggest challenge in trying to translate that to a bigger audience?
Yeah, it is challenging because the detail can be a bit boring, I guess, and definitely as individuals we're so busy. We've got so much going on in our everyday lives that we haven't got the time to kind of delve into the detail of what's going on in these organisations, and that's where I think athletes can have a really important role, because they don't have to talk about the detail, but they can talk about the impacts, and they can speak to different communities and they can reach different people to inspire them to either learn more themselves or become climate activists in their own way. And that I think is where we need to be going through. Yeah. I mean,
the athletes, they have such a responsibility anyway, such a profile, they're right up there, and sometimes they're sticking their head above the parapet to talk about these issues. That comes obviously with its own complexities. But Ebbs, where does the overall responsibility within sport lie here? We've got some absolute beacon examples for our Screen Rovers who do amazing work, but they're one of 72 EFL clubs. So which sorts of, and by the way, Dale Vince is also the owner of Ecotricity, the green energy company. It's something that is his world, so it's easy for him to impose that top down. So, what other kinds of organisations need to really represent here? Is it primarily governing bodies, or who else needs to come to the play?
Yeah, it's a really good question. In the documentary, we spoke to athletes and people where does the responsibility lie? Does it lie with the athletes? Does it lie with the governing bodies? And it's a really difficult position for the athletes. They're flying around the world trying to perform, be at their best, really, be that sort of shining beacon for their country. And there's also that guilt, many of them said, about feeling like they're creating that input and impact. I believe that the responsibility lies with the governing bodies. I look at tours, for example, that take place. An Ashes tour will be flying all over Australia, going all over the gaff, when really you could plan that tour as sustainably as possible. The truth is we don't want to see sport disappear. It's not saying let's sit at home and do nothing. I think we all want to see world leaders, world entertainers doing their thing. However, you want to do it consciously, reduce impact, and while you're at it, educate others about change. So I do think it's not about athletes. I do think it's amazing that there is this sort of generation of activist athlete coming through on many topics, whether it's gender, whether it's race, inequality, sustainability. I'm seeing that, and I think when we get to that stage that athletes are comfortable both performing and talking about what they care about, it would be massive. But it is important that the top drive that change, drive the messaging that allows the athletes to come up and speak in that culture and environment.
So we're hoping to see more from the ICC, from the ECB, but also, as I mentioned before, football's followed by 3.5 billion people. FIFA, UEFA, the FA, the Premier League. Let's see some action, please, and meaningful action. And speaking about football, I mentioned this before in the context of Sky pledging to go net zero carbon by 2030 with our Sky Zero initiative. Well, recently we decided to deliver a single sporting event in the same way, working with Tottenham especially, but also Chelsea in the Premier League. We all came together as a group, all four of us, to make Game Zero happen. What's Game Zero? Quite simply, the world's first ever net zero carbon football match at elite level. We did it for the game between Spurs and Chelsea on Sunday the 19th of September, and here's how it all panned out.
Sky and Tottenham Hotspur making the Premier League fixture against Chelsea the world's first net zero carbon major football match.
The match is aiming to be net zero through emission reductions.
Through things like transport, energy and food, as much as you possibly can, and then any that you can't reduce any further, you offset, and that's how you get to net zero.
It's about educating, isn't it?
It's the little things.
As we approach the winter and everyone looks at their heating stat, they just turn it down a couple of degrees.
That's incredible.
Oh, what do you do?
I put a jumper on.
Yeah, here you go.
I always go on about it, but I use bamboo toilet paper. I think it's a no-brainer, quite frankly.
Spurs have been doing more than most of their modern new stadium. Already the greenest club in the Premier League, which relied heavily on recycled components.
The very floor that we're standing on is made from crushed aggregate from White Hart Lane.
This is the Spurs shirt, which is made from 100% plastic recyclable bottles.
23% of people that are driving to the stadium now, which is pretty low, and we aim to keep reducing that.
I always get public transport when I work for Sky, unless it's 30-40 minutes away.
Michael, you used the bike racks yourself earlier on today, didn't you?
I did, yeah, along with yourself.
I don't have to change a puncture. You just got a puncture.
What you can do for the environment, half an hour, and do you know what? You really enjoy it as well.
There's loads of satisfaction in it, taking care of something and growing it and then eating it yourself.
If you cut meat and dairy out of your diet, you reduce your own carbon footprint from diet and from drink by 73%. That's according to researchers at Oxford University.
See, when you become an adult, you will become a non-eat meter.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that.
The traditional white versus blue of this London derby, but a backdrop of green in this game 0. Both clubs and Sky Sports, as the host broadcaster, flagging up the battle against carbon emissions and what we can all do to help. Here's Lo Celso and Son. Thiago Silva. Nicely done between Kane and Son. The combination that offers hope.
Tottenham are doing a great job, and I don't think there's any reason why other clubs can't be doing the same thing.
A lot of bigger problems in the world like this, and I think we all have to take responsibility for that.
There's huge amounts of room for improvement.
I'm learning as we're going along.
Hopefully it's the beginning of something.
You know, we're just really making a big effort to help.
That was a lot of fun that day at Tottenham. I think you can tell. I mean, everyone really bought in. But as Dave Jones, Sky Sport presenter, Super Sunday presenter, said, we're learning as we go along. And this is very much only the start. And what's been really interesting is that actually it's already inspired a Premier League club, Norwich City, to do their own net zero carbon day. They did it for the game against Leeds United. They did their own version of it. And that's, I think, what we're trying to do here is try and make people aware, first of all, and get them sort of on the journey and encouraged to do the same. I mean, I just had a great time. And by the way, the beer-battered tofu at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium is off the rack. By the way, and also, I found this out only about half an hour ago. See that guy over there, over there with the headset? That is a 360 immersive experience of Game 0 at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. I didn't even realise. But if you want to go and have a little nose around, stick on the headset and have a look after this session. Okay, so Martin, we talked about it there. Travel was a big part of reducing emissions. Fans using bikes, public transport, walking. Both teams' coaches powered by biofuel, something that we decided to prompt. We basically said to the coach company, can we do this? Can we make a change? And actually, they managed to make it happen. They were thankful for it because they can then scale that. They can do that in lots of other scenarios. So that really is meaningful change that we've helped prompt. Tell us where we're at with electric mobility then. I mean, cost, range, infrastructure. I did a climate action takeover day live on Sky Sports News during the summer, and I got range anxiety. It is a thing. But I have to say it was a fantastic experience. But we're not there yet, and I think we still have some way to go in this, don't we?
Well, cost, I think when we put cost as the #1 priority, you know, how much does it cost? How much can I save? How much can I make? That sort of thinking is what's got us into this climate emergency in the first place. Now, the #1 thinking is it sustainable? Is it good for the planet? And when we look at cost, we're not looking just at the cost of, how much it costs at the beginning. It's the cost of the life of the product. People know that getting into the EV may be slightly more expensive than an ICE vehicle at the moment, but the life cost of it's a lot cheaper. You know what I mean? As I touched on earlier, you're not paying the big fuel bills. You're paying a smaller energy prices. So that's one thing you have to consider. Also range. Again, we tend to focus on the things that we can't do rather than focus on the things that we can do. 80% of daily journeys, as I said, are below 40 miles. So let's focus on sorting those out and then, how did I get up here today? I've got an electric vehicle. I didn't. I got the train. There are other ways to get around. There is public transport. Even if, you had to hire an ICE vehicle for one day to do that journey once when you had to go beyond the range of your vehicle. So that's why I said sometimes when you get into electric vehicles, it is a gateway. It's like a Pandora's box. It opens up your thinking in so many areas. And infrastructure, when thinking about that, it has to be future-proofed. We don't want to get into the old iPhone culture of, you know, I spent £1,200 on an iPhone. Before the warranty expired, there's an iPhone 13, you know what I mean? So it's ridiculous. I couldn't believe it. I thought my warranty hasn't expired and there's still a better one. So we have to think about how we design infrastructure. It's got to be modular, a bit like Trigger's broom. I might be a bit of a one there for English people. But yeah, you know, so you can change parts of it. It's easily repairable. So that's what we have to think. We just have to think differently. And the good thing I love about transport is you can talk to anyone in the world. It's like football and rugby. You could go anywhere and talk to somebody about that, and you'll have that common bond. You know, when you are an EV driver, wherever you go and park up, people come up to you and say, what's the range on that? What's it like? You know, then you become an ambassador for it. Yeah. And that's why, you know, everyone here is an ambassador for climate change. We talk about it. We get people emotionally invested. And I love that bit of footage that we just seen there, because that's the kind of footage that connects with people. More so, I don't care, it could be Biden or anyone. People may, you know, think it's blah, blah, blah. But when you see that, because I believe in life, before you want people to understand you, you have to understand them. You have to speak in their language and go out and I wouldn't say dumb it down, but just speak.
No, it's connecting.
Just connecting, yes. And you can only do that when you already have that emotional bond, because they support your team.
And that's exactly what we're trying to do with our audiences, you know, and Sky Sports. You know, we know that our audience is like us, learning about this, and maybe even resistant. Maybe they want their sport to be just sport, but we're trying to make them see that there is another way, and sport can have a different kind of role in their life, not just, you know, the result of the game, whichever team you support. Talking about cars, Ebony, yeah, I'm sure you'll have seen, there's lots of carbon-heavy sponsors in sport, in football, lots of airlines, lots of car manufacturers. They plough a lot of money into sponsorship deals as part of what makes sport go round, I guess. But could you, I'm going to be quite extreme here, could you make a statement here by sort of actually banning heavy polluters getting involved in sport, similar to how, for example, in Formula One not so long ago, we had a ban on tobacco advertising? Can you see that as something that would really make a statement?
It would be dangerous if I was given the decision on what you could do, because I would happily do that. I think there's two sides to it. I think one is doing the right thing and looking at our planet and getting conscious. But the other as well, with a commercial head on, is I think there's a lot of opportunity if you're quite smart about making partnerships with companies that represent your planet, represent your team, represent your values. I also think one thing that while doing the documentary, you realise how much the younger generation really care. I think doing the right thing and the right brand partners with the right content and all that goes with it would also bring along the younger generation feeling more connected to your teams and your. So from one hand is the commercial. I think it's quite a smart thing to do. There's new, really good, sustainable brands that you could do, and on the other, yes, you know, let's be honest, it's the damage. A lot of the damage is done by some of the bigger companies which have a very big you know, carbon footprint and have big issues with it. It's the sort of thing I would not want to promote tobacco to my young child. Why would I now, in this conversation, want to promote the wrong values to a young child? So I think it's the future, and we will see chief execs and leaders starting to make those stronger decisions. I think once one or two do it and see the impact, it will cause a bit of a rolling effect.
I think my sort of take, for what it's worth on this, is that if you have got a sort of a major car manufacturer involved in whatever sporting enterprise that it is, that us as sport have, and whoever it is, whether it's a football club, a cricket club, or, you know, whatever sporting entity, have a responsibility to try and inform that partnership from the inside. So yes, they might have a big carbon footprint, they might not represent the greenest industry in the world, but actually, can we try and harness the partnership and say, hey, you want to be in sport, you want to access our audience, you want to get your eyeballs and the millions of eyeballs on your brand? Well, let's just kind of harness that relationship and be a bit bolder when we strike these partnerships. I think that's what I would like to see. Let's switch away from sort of football particularly, actually. We talked a fair bit about that, and talk about new sports. Hannah, I mean, SailGP, as we've said, it's a new sport. They have decided, I love what they do. They've decided to be super bold, creative, and actually, get this, gamify sustainability. So you race on the water, and obviously, you know, you compete in your races, your fleet races, the final races all around the world. But then you've created an impact league to go alongside that. Can you unpack that for me?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's a really interesting conversation as well. You know, SailGP is a new sport, like Extreme E, for example. And, you know, it's almost like a new innovative company starting where you can bring sustainability in at the start. and so it becomes part of everything you do. Whereas, you know, these bigger sporting events that have been around for years and years and years, they're almost like just trying to add it on now, and so it's like a big corporation trying to add on. It's a lot harder. So I think that's a really interesting discussion as well. But with SailGP, they're doing loads of cool stuff, but the Impact League is specifically around engaging all the individual teams. So I think there's 9 or 10 teams now from each different countries around the world, and each team is fighting for the planet whilst they're racing on the water. So looking at how we get to the venue, where we stay, transport when we're at the venue, the food we eat, how much waste we're producing, any innovative ideas that the teams are coming up with to reduce waste or reduce our impact on the planet, all gets marked, and then at the end of the event it gets audited, and there's an Impact League. And so at the end of the season, each team has a purpose partner that they're racing for, and the winner of the Impact League wins, I think it's $150,000 for their purpose partner. So it's a really, really cool initiative, and it's really engaged everyone within SailGP with what they're doing.
They are so, I mean, this is, you know, athletes, you know, the athlete mindset, competitive. My goodness, I was just talking to a couple of people from SailGP, and they were saying that actually the emails that sort of fly around, all the different skippers, like some of the best sailors on the planet, like a who's who of sailing, and they're all emailing saying, hang on, how did they get that? Mate? What about New Zealand? What do they do? Hang on a minute, but why did you mark us down on this? And blah, 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 blah. And they just really get into it. And I think that's it. That's that engagement, that connection. And then if they can then reflect that to their audiences, then you've got something really special there. And again, also, Extreme E is a really interesting one. Martin, again, I know I'm not trying to just pigeonhole you as the transport, mobility, motoring kind of, you know, voice in this conversation, but Extreme E, if everyone, you know, is aware, is a sport which races electric SUVs in remote corners of the planet that have been devastated by climate change to really raise awareness of the issue. And all the athletes involved, again, it's a who's who of motorsport. Jenson Button's got a team, Lewis Hamilton's got a team, Nico Rosberg's got a team. There are some of the world's most successful rally drivers involved, some brilliant rallycross drivers, and they all get involved in the legacy projects as well. This, from a standing start, is an incredible sport to just build. But obviously it's probably a little easier, Martin, if it's a new sport compared to an established sport like Rugby Union or Rugby League. But do you think that could be replicated in the future, that actually not only will new sports just be inbuilt with purpose, but also it might inform the established sports and make them take a look at themselves?
Absolutely. I think within these new sports becomes a new mindset, a new way of thinking. And I think sometimes that established sports, you know, they just have done things the way they've always done things since 1895 and before. And sometimes they need a little bit of freshening up. I know that a lot of boards, such as the RFU, are looking to expand. You know, I don't like that word diversity, because I like to say reflective, you know. Governing bodies should be reflective of the people that they govern. And I don't think that's a crazy thing to think of. And then that also involves getting new, fresh blood in there who thinks slightly differently and can help that organisation along.
Would you like to see more young people involved?
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. I think everyone's got a voice. You know, even in my own home, you know, I always think you can learn from everybody, you know. That's why I always think when your desire is up here and your knowledge is down there, I'd rather be that than if your knowledge is up there and your desire is down there, because then you think you know it all. And we'll never know it all. Even the day that we leave this planet, we'll never know. So we've always got to be open to learn. And I think if these established sports can learn from these new sports, there's takeaways. And if you can get people within your organisation who have that mindset, it's definitely a winning mindset. Because sometimes, you know, it does get a little bit sort of dusty in these boardrooms, and you know, I don't like to say it, you know, that there's a certain type of man of a certain type of age, and they're not doing anything bad. They're just going to have a certain mindset, but they're going to have someone different is just going to think, and then you have those moments where you go, oh, and that's how the world evolves.
Ebbs, what about the 100? I'm kind of thinking. So we showed this sort of live on Sky Sports. The BBC were also showing live games. It's a new competition based around, you know, giving parity in terms of pay, in terms of stature, in terms of media coverage to the men's and women's teams involved in this franchise tournament, 100 balls aside. Is this an opportunity to make a beeline for climate action, given especially the audience that cricket is trying to attract? You know, not the bacon and egg ties sitting, you know, in front of the pavilion, you know, at Lord's, but very different audience. You know, is this, you know, could the 100 actually move into this space? Is that where you'd like to see it go?
Yeah, I'd really like to see it go. Anyone who, I mean, I'm not expecting everyone to be cricket fans here, but anyone who follows the sport, the 100 was quite controversial because it was quite new, it was quite fast, it was quite very different to the establishment of the game. But with that brought men and women at equality, more diversity seen on screen behind, you know, the whole conversation changed. And there's absolutely no reason why this should be not part of it. Basically, it should be embedded in the fabric. And I think in terms of influencing audiences, there's one thing I've learned about this whole journey. On a personal level, when you talk to someone about sustainability, for a lot of people, it's quite hard work. You've got a lot going on in your life, and you're like, oh my God, this is, you know, it's quite painful to make all that change. But when you see an inspiring thing, that kind of, you know, the pain-pleasure model, when you see that, and I think with the 100, with all the excitement, the role models and the opportunity to talk about it, the sustainability messages would bring that exciting change of behaviour. So for me, it's got to be a must. I think it's already in conversations of how next year could really add that on. So I'm looking forward to seeing it. And I think that new fresh sport, the new fresh sports actually have much more opportunity to move quickly.
We should really mention one thing, which is that, you know, the 100 trying to make an appeal to younger people, change the demographic of people who are coming into cricket grounds and consuming the sport. We're trying to make sustainability cool, and I think that actually we can probably learn from the way that the 100 is engaging youth to try and do the same thing. And the other thing that makes sustainability cool is athletes. And actually, you know, there's no doubt that, you know, athletes standing for planet can make it a huge impact. Look at what Marcus Rashford has done in terms of combating child food poverty. There's no doubt about the incredible impact, you know, making a government U-turn on a policy and just, you know, just the power of social media really coming into its own. Now, we're looking for our Rashford of climate. I guess, you know, you guys are strong candidates, I would say.
No one knows us, that's what you're saying.
No. No, but I'd like to just kind of just show you another little video at this point. One of these kind of incredible advocates is Patrick Bamford. He has decided to really take climate action into the world of football and football celebration with Bolt for Planet. It's a gesture. I'm going to show you it. I'm going to put down my mic because I can't do it with one hand. It's that. That's what he does. So basically, every time he scores a goal, that's what he does. And then young people copy him, and they wonder what it is, and then they find out, and then they explain to their own parents what it means. So I actually interviewed Patrick during the summer. He told me how this all came about and what actually a powerful vehicle this could be. Have a look.
When I was younger, as a kid, I was playing in the playground, scoring goals, playing football, and doing a celebration with your mates, whether it was the shearer or whatever celebration it was. And I'm thinking, what kids could be doing this, like this kind of celebration. And I actually did a football kind of soccer camp, just went and visited earlier this off-season and got all the kids to do this picture. No, got all the kids to do this for a picture, sorry. And I know I'm not stupid enough to think that by doing this they know that it's for climate change and they know what it's about, but as soon as you see people doing it, they're going to keep going. And if their mum and dads, if I was a parent and I saw my kid doing this sign, I'd want to know what it meant.
Yeah,
and then
of course.
all of a sudden you're not just educating the kids, but you're educating the parents.
Yourselves, yeah, of course.
And it just starts growing like that, so
organic,
hopefully. Exactly.
Which in itself is quite apt, I suppose. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? When you think about the famous celebrations in sport, right? So you've got the Bolt, you've got the Mobot, yes, the Shearer, and you've got Griezmann, who had about 12.
Yeah.
but none of them are particularly purposeful.
Yeah.
But here you are, and go back to that story with you and Michael just, you know, wandering down the street, saying how cool would it be to be an iconic sort of celebration with a Leeds number 9 in the Premier League. But actually, deeper than that, this would perhaps be, it's got to be the first purposeful celebration, and how that's sort of embedded in football culture and social culture and social media. That's so significant, isn't it?
It's kind of hard to believe because, one, for me, it's hard to think of somebody actually copying my celebration like a little kid, but also I don't think I'll quite understand the impact it's probably having until further down the line, because right now you're kind of immersed in it and you can't sometimes step back and see what's going on around you, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But that's the aim. Hopefully that by doing this, as I said, the traction keeps growing and growing, and people start doing it and people start realising what it means.
Got to keep scoring the goals then, Patrick.
Yeah, no pressure. But yeah, as long as I do that, then yeah.
Patrick is absolutely phenomenal, and we're hoping to be working with him more and more as we go forward, so watch this space. But Patrick Bamfords don't grow on trees. Not everyone wants to put their head above the parapet, Hannah. What are the main challenges? Why is that?
Yeah, I think there's obviously the hypocrisy piece. You know, but we're all hypocrites. So I'm sort of not sure that is an argument really. And I've seen it on Twitter this week, people calling me out for being a hypocrite, and that's just part and parcel, I guess, of being on social media and what you experience. So there is that fear, and I think there's a lack of perhaps education in this space for athletes, which is something I'm in the future going to be working on, to try and give them the confidence to speak more openly and freely and about this topic. But yeah, I think it's mainly the fear. The fear of speaking out is big with athletes, because we see how much abuse people can get for different things, and it's not easy to deal with. So I think that's the main thing we need to try and overcome.
Ebbs, I know that you searched high and wide for guests for your documentary, and you got some great voices that were very, very strong. What difference would it make if someone, say, with the profile of Virat Kohli, came out and said, I pronounce myself as someone for climate, that I want to be an advocate, maybe even I want to be an activist. What do you think, how much of a difference would that make?
It changed the game, really. It massively changed the game. You know, he's got 100 million followers or whatever he's got. You know, in a global game, he's seen as an icon and a leader, and someone like that coming and speaking would influence the kids. It would influence the sport, because I think brands would want to come on board. It would drive so many different parts of it. And I think one thing that I think about with cricket, you know, as a sport, I commentate on it now for a living, and in May, I think it was, rain was stopped for snow. And then through the summer, I've had test matches where every single day it's rained on, and I've had now test matches rained out. And you're seeing this impact. So at some stage, I think an athlete's going to get fed up. You know, they get fed up with umpiring, they get fed up with this, that, and the other. At some stage, someone's got to say, my sport is being lost, actually. We're losing more and more days. I could go to Australia, and because of the smog, we saw tests in Australia. So I think it's getting close to somebody wanting to speak up, and if someone of the impact of that level really said, look, we're losing our sport here, and if we actually don't come together collectively to make change, that we don't. So I want to see it. I think the only thing I say as an athlete, and I know myself, I've spoken up on a lot of issues since I've been retired. When you're still playing, it does add that pressure of performance, and you have to kind of back yourself. But when someone's got the two and they add it together, I think it'll be magic.
We mentioned, and Hannah mentioned it, about sort of the education piece. Look, science is sometimes complicated, and this is a tricky subject, and you know, you don't want to tie yourself up in knots, do you? And you'll get some, you know, smart person on Twitter or something who's going to be pointing something out to you, and you might not necessarily know sort of how to respond. Is there work being done, Hannah, in terms of that education piece and athletes feeling a little bit more secure in the information?
Yeah, so we, or myself and a rower, Melissa Wilson, have been working with Aim High Earth, who are an incredible organisation all around educating. Well, they've done some work with you guys at Sky, but they're all around educating in this climate space, but in like really simple, cool ways of delivering that message. And Melissa actually was really involved before Tokyo. At the Tokyo Games, engaging, I think, over 80 Team GB athletes in an hour-long session around climate education, and looking forward to the Winter Games. We're going to try and work with the IOC and Team GB and as many federations as possible around trying to deliver that piece to athletes that makes it really relevant to their sport and why it's impacting them. And I think that could be really powerful, because once people can see the impact on them, then they start to act and they start to care and they start to get involved.
In terms of athletes, you know, needing to walk their talk, I mean, they're not going to stand for climate without making those changes in their life. It would help, I suppose, if they already were sort of inbuilt with a sustainability mindset. And I know that Martin, I mean, you know, we had a coffee a couple of weeks ago, and we went deep into this subject. We went to a special place, you and me. No, but just give us your insights, because I know you're a passionate believer of this concept. So what can athletes learn from that as they push into this space, make use of their platform and convince others to follow?
Just, you know, I've got 3 words. Just be brave, passionate and authentic, and tell your story. Do your stuff. That's what people want to know. They want to, you know, you can hear all the facts, you can get all the knowledge, but at the end of the day, they just want to know, you know, what is Patrick Bamford doing? What is Marcus Rashford doing? They just want to hear those stories and to believe those stories and then resonate, you know. Just tell your job, buy an EV, or tell, you know, how you had all the pains of trying to find a charger. I think Mika Richards was on TV telling his story about he had to give his car back because Harrogate Council or something would put a charger in for him. That's what people want to hear, these real life stories. And it's not about, you know, learning stuff. It's just about going along, doing what it is that you're doing and being brave enough to tell that story, because that's what people want to hear, because we learn as human beings either through emotion or repetition. You know, that's the only two ways we can learn. You know, if you put your hand in a fire, it burns, you're not going to put your hand in it, or your mum has to tell you every day for 10 years. Either way, you learn. That's the only way we learn.
Yeah, and I think that the authenticity bit is absolutely key. We can't pretend to be perfect in any way in this space, because people, first of all, then will go, oh, well, that's you and you're an elite athlete and you're perfect and I'm not. It's not going to check out for me. But also, it's more believable, and people want to see people's true personalities. Talking to Patrick Bamford, he said, I tried to go vegan. I was like, oh, yeah, how did that go? He went, not great, to be honest. I tried.
That's what people want to hear.
Yeah, because that's human, that's normal. And it humanises them, and it makes them more like us in that respect. They're not, you know, yes, we idolise them, and, you know, they are gods to us in some respects, Premier League footballers, World Cup winners, you know, Olympic gold medalists, etc. But then we are all the same on this level and dealing with this issue. But let's kind of champion the athlete again. And at this point, I'm going to champion a bit of work that was done by Hannah Mills MBE. Earlier this week, Hannah and Sky Sports, we sort of helped lead on this, I suppose, published an incredible video along with Melissa Wilson, rower, GB rower, and very kindly said to Sky Sports, you can run it first and then give it to everyone else and let's get this out there. And it is some of the most biggest names, particularly in Olympic sport. The IOC have backed this video that was made that was released on Monday. It's called Dear Leaders of the World. We gave it a run on Monday. It's been played at COP, but for anyone who hasn't seen it, it is really impactful. Have a look at it now.
Dear leaders of the world.
Dear leaders of the world.
Dear leaders of the world.
This summer, at the Tokyo Olympic and Paralympic Games,
we as athletes chased excellence in the face of challenges.
To overcome obstacles.
To lead the pack.
to go faster, higher, stronger.
Together. Under immense pressure and adversity.
We delivered.
Meeting goals that others believe impossible.
Tokyo and the people of Japan delivered.
When many thought it impossible.
Each Games seeks to deliver a lasting legacy.
But how do we pass on that legacy if there isn't a safe and healthy planet to experience it?
Heat, humidity and extreme weather conditions
mean many of our sports are already under threat.
And sport is just one part of a much greater global picture.
We did our utmost this summer.
And we know that when we strive to achieve our best, others come with us.
Now, it's your chance to deliver.
This is the race we need to win. And the speed of the race is determined by each of the participants in it.
At COP26,
the Olympics of climate summits,
we need you to lead us.
To show real ambition and courage.
Working together to secure the future that we all depend on.
Anything less won't win this race.
Over the next fortnight, we will be looking to you and supporting you.
To forge the ultimate legacy.
A healthy, safe Earth for all.
Yours, athletes of the world.
It's brilliant, isn't it? Yeah, absolutely. And Hannah, I know we've talked about this over the last week, but really well done. Amazing work, amazing work. And thank you for letting us run it on Sky Sports News, and we hope that we gave it the whole backing, the digital strategy, everything kicked in to get it to the biggest audience possible, because that's the key. Everyone needs to see it, but clearly that's aimed at world leaders. So why should world leaders listen to athletes? What qualities or traits, characteristics do you have that make you apt in this conversation?
Well, I think there's the obvious ones, elite athletes at the top of their game. There's determination, there's resilience, there's ambition. You push boundaries. You're trying to find every single thing you possibly can to be the best and to win the race. And so that there's those obvious ones. But also, I think there's nothing quite like the Olympic Games for me that brings the entire world together for a 2-week period where you've got over 200 countries competing, and there's obviously what happens that everyone sees on the screens, but then there's also what happens in the athlete village where the athletes are meeting each other, they're chatting, they're sharing stories, cultures, experiences, and that is just incredibly powerful. So to unite those athletes globally around a common cause, it just felt like the right thing to try and do.
Obviously there's a lot of focus on these 2 weeks, but something I'm actually very acutely aware of and I'm thinking about a lot. Yes, this is the tentpole, this is COP, this is what we're all focused on, but part of me is going, what happens on Monday the 15th of November after COP? What happens then? And actually, Sky and everyone involved in this discussion has a real responsibility to keep the ripple effect of COP going. And my mind is not letting me rest with this, and I'm trying to think of ways in which we can do that. For you, after this video, what's the next step, Hannah?
Sleep. It was pretty intense trying to put it together. It was a pretty short time frame. No, Melissa and I are carrying on the conversation around engaging athletes in this space. Obviously, I mentioned the education piece. I think that's really, really key for it to be authentic when athletes start talking about this, but also for them to understand they don't need to be an expert, because I'm certainly not an expert. I'm learning as I go. I'm educating myself because I'm passionate. And so if people don't feel that they need to be an expert in this space, I think that will really help.
In terms of getting the word out there to try and spread this to as many people as possible, obviously, the tentpole of the Olympics and COP26 coming together, that's really powerful. How much of it is about actually, if you're an athlete, Martin, making the most of that mega sporting moment, when you're atop the podium at Olympic Games or Formula One Grand Prix, or you score a goal at a World Cup. I was watching Patrick Bamford play for England against Andorra. I was desperate for him to score because he would have done the bolt for planet in front of all the cameras playing for England. Do you expect there will be more sort of bold statements in the future when athletes do become more and more active? They kind of go, no, this is the moment, now I can do it, and it's the time to really stand up and I'm going to just use the tempo? Yeah,
God, if you're an athlete and you get one moment like that in your whole career, you're doing well. I always say that careers can be forgotten, but moments last forever. And it's going to happen one day. We've seen in the past, great spectacles which have lasted, even going back to when I was a very young boy, the 1968 Olympics, Tommy Smith and John Carlos making that Black Power salute, even what Colin Kaepernick is doing today, Owen Farrell with his Jordan Jack salute. These are things that people talk about, and we need more of these, because it's not going to take one thing, because I always have this saying, I hope I get it right, and that is that somebody can't connect with everybody, but everybody can connect with somebody. We just need enough somebodies to connect with everybody.
Do you know what? I think what I like about this sort of idea is that we're using moments of joy to connect to people. Scoring a goal, a moment of success, and using that to really have that impact. And we've seen a lot of, and we keep reflecting this on Sky Sports News, obviously not in the climate space, but of players taking a knee before Premier League games, because we want to keep it on the radar. But that's a somber moment. This is an exciting moment, a moment of celebration. And I think it sort of just changes the tone around what climate action is. Makes it cool again, which I think is something that we're trying to kind of come back to. Speaking of which, Youth Day here at COP26. And along with the Ebony-Jewel Hannah Mills and Martin Offiah's this world, we need some people to kind of pass the baton on too. Do you sense, Ebony, that there are young talents coming through that are inspired by the likes of Bamford and Rashford and yourselves that can really continue this journey for us? Do even better than us?
Yeah, but quite exciting. So an example, I run a charity at the moment, finding out talent from underrepresented groups. We're in 3 cities. And we were having a conversation with the team the other day. We do nothing about sustainability, but as a chair of the charity, I was like, hold on, what were we conversating? We were working it out that, let's just say our academy in London, 100 kids, we see single-use plastic coming in, and we were working out the numbers. We were like, if every kid has one one day. That's 36,000 bottles used just alone in our academy in London, let alone the thousands of kids that we're impacting. And so at the moment, the team are coming together, and we already started saying, how can we're going to get the kids to design games where it's active but also learning facts as they go. We're going to look to get sustainable bottles across, and actually the good news, I talked about being smart with commercial partners, and a commercial partner said they might come along and just sponsor the bottles so the kids all have one. How can we make it fun that not telling anybody off, but if you forget your bottle, right, what's the kind of consequence or that sort of stuff. And interestingly, members of our team who are coaches who care nothing about sustainability have said, all right, we're maybe not 100% with you, but we will come along. So what's quite great is we're going to get the kids to design a lot of that. It's not going to come from us. They care. How can they make it fun amongst them? And then they, when they go and become amazing champions, can spread the word.
Guys, look, it says 30 seconds on the clock. Give me one sentiment each, one message that you want to leave with everyone here. 10 seconds each. Martin, go.
If you have a goal, one of three things happen. You achieve it, you give up, or you'll die. I don't want to die, and I'm not giving up, so I'm going to achieve it.
Fantastic. Hannah Mills.
Yeah. I don't have a message, but I think sport is such a great innovator, a forward-thinking entity that I think, if we unite that power of sport, we can create incredible change in this space.
Ebony-Jewel.
I just want to see us shout more about it. There are people doing good work. Come together, shout, and that will get the rest going.
Proper broadcaster finishes right on 0. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up. Ebony-Jewel Rainford-Brent, Hannah Mills, and Martin Offiah. Thank you very much indeed.